The farm bills. From your relatives to Rihanna, everyone must be talking about this over the last few months. But how many of you can tell me what they're actually about? And why are they causing so much controversy? We'll explore all this and more on the second episode of Arny News. Before I discuss the bills themselves, let's take a bit of a history lesson to understand why they've come about. So the British didn't leave India in a very prosperous situation, and by the 1960s, India was not able to feed all of its citizens. Devastating droughts and famine made it nearly impossible to produce enough food for everyone. To solve this problem, India brought in foreign advisors to help invest in better technology and irrigation systems. This was known as the Green Revolution. A few downsides of this was that a lot of soil became infertile due to overuse of pesticides and over irrigation. So while crops like barley and millets nearly disappeared, two crops excelled over everything else. Those are rice and wheat, and the production of these crops skyrocketed, and all these methods were found to be extremely effective to growing these crops. Now came the new problem of having to regulate crop prices so that the farmers aren't exploited. To solve this, the government came up with the idea of Agricultural Produce Market Committees, or APMCs. These are popularly known as mandis colloquially. All farmers are supposed to bring their produce to these mandis, where traders will ideally hold an open auction to dictate the price of any crop. But this price cannot be less than the minimum support price, or MSP, dictated by the government. The government only buys a small percentage of crops at this price, but that price that it dictates is useful to set the price for all the other traders. But this system has many flaws. Firstly, the open auction system is corrupted by the collusion of traders. That means that before the mandi opens, all these traders will meet and determine the price of all the crops. So, in theory, it should be a competitive auction where all the traders can come and bid for the crops. But what happens is all these traders will bid the same price because they've determined, and in the end, the farmers can't negotiate with these terms and they have to accept whatever price was decided by this cartel of traders. Secondly, only 6 to 25% of these farmers actually use the APMCs or the mandis to sell their crops. And most of them have to go outside the mandis, legally or illegally, depending on the state, and sell their crops outside. So, why is this? That's because there isn't enough distribution of mandis in each state. In many states, the worst example being Meghalaya, where there's only one mandi for every 11,225 square kilometers. So, in many states, just the transport cost to go to the mandi discourages the farmer from going there because the transport costs or the amount that it'll take them to, whether it's petrol, whether it's resources, to take that many crops from their farm to the mandi will be more than what they can earn in the mandi. So what they'd end up doing is selling to these unlicensed traders who will buy it at any price they want because they know the farmer doesn't have any other choice because they can't go to the mandi, and what ends up happening is the farmers get cheated. So this is a big flaw in the system. So, what are the farm bills themselves? There are three bills that were introduced by the central government, and I'll try to go through the pros and cons of them. The first bill is the Farmers Produce, Trade and Commerce Act of 2020. The main thing that this act focuses on is allowing farmers to sell their crops outside of mandis, and that the government will not be able to regulate any of these deals made outside of the mandis. So basically, what this means is that a farmer will be able to allowed to sell to any trader that they want, wherever they want. So hypothetically, a farmer from Bihar could sell his crops in Bengaluru, and however unlikely that might be, that is allowed now, which was not allowed earlier. Earlier, they could only sell in one mandi which they were assigned to, and this gives them freedom to sell wherever they want. But the controversy here is that since there's no regulation or enforcement of MSP, corporate players could exploit the farmers, and this is a controversial act for this reason. Second, we have the Farmers Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act of 2020. So, this act provides a legal framework for farmers to enter into pre arranged contracts with external buyers, including pricing being pre decided. So, this is a very controversial bill, and what basically it means is that farmers can enter into contracts with corporations where the price is fixed throughout. So, what this and there's no MSP that will be regulated in these. The government cannot regulate these contracts, so the contract can be set for below MSP as well, and the farmers will be at the mercy of corporates, according to the farmers who are protesting. So, the remedy that the government has given to help if the corporates default on their contracts is that district magistrate courts have been given the jurisdiction to solve this, but they are already full with cases, and they are not able to complete the cases already, so it's very doubtful that they'll be able to solve the quarrels of these farmers with corporates who have so much funding to spend on law teams, and obviously they will have an upper hand. And but something that isn't being covered is that farmers can go to consumer courts now, because once they enter into a contract with corporates, they also become consumers of their products, and now they can enter into contracts with these corporations, knowing that they're consumers, and go to consumer court to get it solved, where it will be much easier to get it solved because there isn't that much backlog of cases. But still, there is no guarantee of MSP, which is why farmers in Punjab and Haryana who heavily rely on MSP are protesting so much. But one misconception that's being spread is that in these contracts, the corporates will be able to buy the land, but this is not true. There can be no acquisition of land whatsoever, according to the bill, through these contracts. This is only for the acquirement of crops and the price being pre decided. The third and final act is the Essential Commodities Act of 2020. So, back when India was in a period of drought and famine, the government wanted to ensure that there were certain crops and items that were not hoarded or stockpiled so that people can have access to them. And this helped a lot as important essentials were made accessible. So, this list of items was called the Essential Commodities List, and in them were many crops. And for example, this year during COVID, the government added masks and sanitizers to this list so that people don't stockpile them or hoard them. So there's only a certain amount of masks and sanitizers which you are allowed to keep right now. So similarly, they also have this for rice and potatoes and many other crops. But in recent years, India has faced the reverse problem of what was there during the famine, where there is excess of food grains, and the combination of poor storage infrastructure, and they want to comply with these laws, right? They cannot hoard too much. So what they have to do is they have to keep throwing out food, and a lot of food is being dumped and wasted in India, which made India one of the most biggest wasters of food. But the thing is, India still has so many hungry people. And it was really sad to see this food get wasted because of these laws. So, what the government did was they removed restrictions on hoarding of foodstuffs such as cereals, pulses, onions, and rice, potatoes, and many of these crops. They removed them from the essential commodities list. So, what this allows is for big players to invest in stuff like cold storages and huge warehouses now, because now they're allowed to stockpile that, right? So this will increase supply during the season where there's a lot of harvest, and they will be able to sell this much later as well. But the controversy there is because these corporates can decide not to buy from farmers because they have already so much stock and they've hoarded so much that they don't need to buy from farmers in off seasons, or seasons where there's not enough rain, because they already have these crops, and this makes it scary for the farmers. But this also encourages a lot of people to build better storage infrastructure, because now it's not illegal to hoard that anymore, right? So this has its pros and cons, because the mandis were wasting a lot of food, and this was made to combat that. So now that I've explained the three bills, let's see what the experts think about it. So I would say the scholars are very divided in this front. Experts from the International Monetary Fund, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi University, and many other universities have come out in support of the bill. And they say that it's very crucial for the economy of the country to develop. But many experts from the World Bank, IIT Madras, IISc Bangalore, and University of Massachusetts, among others, have come out against it, saying that this exploits farmers even more and allows for corporates to seize control in India. The US State Department, actually, under Biden, came out in support of these laws, saying that they would improve market efficiency. But I feel like this has become a political issue where it shouldn't be, because this was in the Congress manifesto as well in their 2019 election campaign, which means that both sides were for this bill, even though it might be, going against the farmers. I believe that deeply this is not a political issue. So while making this episode, I thought long and hard about whether I want to go into the riots, the tweets by celebrities, but I feel like my job and what I want to do is to inform but not to convince. My job is not for me to convince you that some political belief is correct. I just want to provide you with the facts, the pros and the cons, and you should decide whether you are for or against this bill, because in the end, that is how I believe politics should be consumed. So I will not be talking about this in this episode, but if you feel that I should go into these riots or go into the tweets made by celebrities and talk about all that, I will make another episode. So drop a comment below to let me know if you guys want an episode about that. So, what can we learn from all of this? And I feel like we have talked a lot about this in our living rooms or in our group chats, but in the end, we end up forgetting that this is, in essence, about farmers. In both the old system, the Mandi system, as well as the new system, the farmers seem like they're getting the short end of the stick. And in a country where agriculture is making up a smaller and smaller part of the economy, but there's still a large percentage of the population, we need to make sure that they are secure, because in the end, they are the ones feeding us. So, whether these bills will be able to do that or not is questionable, but it's for us to see how it is implemented. But in the end, I think what we can learn from this is that it's often easy to forget the small man when we're talking about such big issues. But remember, the farmers are the ones that this bill is all about. Thank you for watching Arny News.